When twilight comes, it's time to light your lantern. But sometimes human technology isn't enough to get past nature's barriers. That was the case when early sonar came up against the lanternfish, which congregates in the millions. This tiny mesopelagic creature bioluminates the twilight zone, following the gray haze up and down with the turning of the earth. But following the light is one way to find food in life, death, and taxonomy. Welcome back to Life, Death, and Taxonomy. It's your 30 minutes of interesting animal information. I'm Joe.
And I'm Carlos.
Thank you to Cassie for the creation of our theme song. To hear more of Cassie's music, please search Cassie Michelle on YouTube or Spotify.
And thank you to Johanna for the creation of this week's artwork. To check that out, you can visit us. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter at LD Taxonomy, or visit us at our home on the web at ldtaxonomy.com. And a very special thank you to our patrons. Thank you to Tristan Taylor, Jesse Raspulich, Carol Raspulich, Paul Chomo, and Richard Kaspar. Thank you so much for your support. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you for helping us keep the lights on.
And today we're talking about a little fish of mine, but more on that later.
Not a big fish?
This little fish of mine.
Oh, I do not want to hear any more children's songs, please. That's my whole life is Daniel Tiger and Max the Glow Train. But at least, you know, the Bible songs are fun and meaningful and impactful. But we are talking about the spotted lanternfish, or just lanternfish in general. Otherwise known as the sonar scrambler, the whittle wishy-washy, and the glow guppy.
I like him all.
I was after looking at this guy, I was like, this as much as of a regular fish this looks like, it is really ringing some bells. And I was like looking up other like minnows and guppies and sardines and stuff like that, like regular fish. I was like, what does this look like? This looks exactly like the Pokemon Wishy-Washy.
Never heard or seen such an animal.
It's not. What? Because it's a Pokemon.
Such a Pokemon.
Doesn't exist. It's not real.
It's
a newer one, and it's not very good. But that's why I was ringing the bell. But
yeah, I guess.
Are you looking at it? It's that little minnow shape with the giant eyes. He's got two of them. So yeah, that must have been what they went off of. But let's taxonomize this real quick. The kingdom is the one you know, love, and are in. That's Animalia. Phylum is Chordata. The class, it's a fish. Say it with me. Actinopterygii. Fun. This is I'm getting to the point where I can spell that without having to look it up. The order is Myctophiformes. Myctophiformes. I'm sorry, I was not anticipating the PH and then the F being right next to each other like that. The family is Myctophidae. The genus is Myctophum. And the species is Punctatum. So this is straight up a Hogwarts spell. Myctophum Punctatum. I can't even say it.
No, that's
swish
the language.
And flick.
That's the language Anakin speaks to Watto when he's still on Tatooine.
Myctotum Punctatum.
Yeah.
Jawa Jawa.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
It's Huttese is the language.
Yeah.
Man, it's a pretty nerdy thing to say, I guess. Oh well, because we're in the business of naming things, it's time for my favorite part of the show, nitty gritty nomenclature. We already know what a
school of
fish is, and even the Pokemon Wishy-Washy's ability is called schooling, so we get it. It's a school. So we're gonna have to go with what does the nomenclature mean? So, does Myctophum punctatum mean A, spotted snake nose, B, small light fish, C, fast bait fish, or D, glowing stalk eye?
Small light fish. Final answer.
You're not even going to think about it?
No.
Incorrect. The answer is spotted snake nose.
I should have went with spotted since it's the spotted one.
It is it is the spotted lanternfish, but yeah, punctatum means spotted. Which, I mean, once I looked it up, I was like, I see it now. Like,
that makes
punctuation
sense.
kind of thing. But Myctophum means snake nose. Sure.
Fair enough.
I don't even see it when I look at when I look at the animal. But since we're looking at the animal, let's describe it. So the spotted lanternfish is basically a giant-eyed sardine. It has a thin body with mottled brown scales, and yes, massive eyes, characteristic of animals that live at the bottom of the ocean. It also has a slightly protruding snout that I guess is snake-looking, but it really just looks like a standard fish face, or minnow face or something like that. It doesn't look like a snake at all to me. Not like a snake head. And other than that, there's really nothing else interesting about its appearance, even in the dark. So stop asking. And he's very small. So how small is it, Joe?
Well, that brings us to the beloved The Measure Up segment, the official listener's favorite part of the show. The part of the show when we present the animal size and dimensions in relatable terms through a quiz that's fun for the whole family. It's also part of the show that's introduced by you when you send in audio of yourself saying, singing, or chittering the words measure up into ldtaxonomy@gmail.com. We don't have a new measure up intro this week, so we'll have to look back into the archives for our greatest hits. Okay, without further ado, the listener's favorite part of the show. Do you know,
that sounds.
Do you know who that is?
That sounds familiar.
That was sent in by Bibby, but do you know who's in it? Besides Bibby.
No.
It's sent in by Abby and Joel. My favorite. My favorite Sufjan Stevens album.
Are his albums
just
people's names?
Carrie and Lowell.
Oh. Okay, yeah, this is one that we got. One of the ones that we held the entire family hostage until they all gave us measure ups during one family vacation. I'm very fun on family vacations.
Forcing your relatives to make you content.
Yeah. To participate in something they don't listen to.
Well, I guess then thank you to Abby and...
Yeah, thank you, Abby and Joel. And
Joel will fall on deaf ears.
Oh, they may listen to this eventually. If I evangelize enough.
Okay, let's talk about length. They're 11 centimeters, or 4.3 inches. Lanternfish in general, the family, can range, but they're mostly very small. Some can be like the tip of your thumb, the length of your thumb, which 4.3 inches is...
Oh, bigger than that.
Yeah, it's like your thumb to your index, maybe.
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, it really looks like it should be on a pizza. I mean, not should, like it would be on a pizza, but not my pizza.
Hashtag not my pizza.
No, not my pizza.
So how many lanternfish go into the height of the largest sky lantern ever made?
I'm gonna go ahead and let you define what a sky lantern is.
Have you ever seen Tangled?
Yeah. It's that.
Yeah.
It's basically a runaway hot air balloon with nobody in it.
A hot air balloon that is not manned.
Okay.
So essentially, what is the largest piece of trash somebody transplanted from one area to another?
Basically a weather balloon that
Via heat.
functions like a hot air balloon. Long distance hot trash.
Here's a hint. The largest lantern from the sky was created in January 2009 in Colombia. The lantern was given the title. Is that? What? It's Spanish. Hold on. Homenaje a la fauna del planeta. How would you pronounce fauna in Spanish?
Fauna.
Fauna?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fauna. Like
Lauda? Like Laura?
Yeah. Do you know what that is? That means?
Hamana.
You might if I
saw it.
If maybe. I could say it. Home nahe. Probably homage. Homage. Same word as that. A la fauna de...
Homage to the animals of the planet or something like that?
Planet's wildlife tribute. Yes.
I mean, goodness, hot air balloons are huge. You could technically have one that's just as big as a hot air balloon. But that's a lot of trash. So, I'll go with maybe half the size of a hot air balloon. Which I don't know how big a hot air balloon is. They're really big. The height of one?
The height of the thing, not how tall it is. Not how high it was.
Yeah, the height.
How tall it was. Yeah.
I'll say like 15 feet. The answer is 41. We'll say 42. We'll round up. 42 of these lanternfish go into the biggest tangled lantern. All those days chasing down a daydream. I've heard that song a lot too. Yeah, 42.
Correct answer is 106.
Oh, goodness. It's big boy.
The lantern was 11.68 meters, or 38 feet and 3 inches.
See, I went with 30 feet for like a hot air balloon, and then I just cut that in half and went with 15. So
it was a full hot air balloon.
That's I can see that now. See the error of my ways. It was a full-on hot air balloon.
Let's talk dive depth. They may be found as low as 1,000 meters, or 3,280 feet, 3,280 feet. So how many lanternfish depths would it take to get to space? In America.
What is space?
Yeah, that's why I had to say in America, because it is considered a different height in other places.
Also, the atmosphere isn't like a defined line where at one point you are in the atmosphere, and then if you just poke your head up, you're in space.
Well, that brings us to our hint. The U.S. decided that space would officially start where the atmospheric pressure dropped less than 1 pound per square foot. And they decided this because planes can't go to space. And they were measuring this with a plane. And the plane couldn't go any higher than this because the pressure wasn't enough.
Planes cannot space good, so that's a good measurement. They're not good at space.
Cargo space? No, cargo ground.
That's actually a pretty good hint. Because I was going to go by the International Space Station, which I do know the height of. But that is a lot higher than planes can go. So, I'm going to go with 150,000 feet. Because that sounds very high for a plane. But maybe like a stealth bomber or something like that. One of those ones that goes above the radar. Can go super high. I'm going to go with 200,000 feet. That sounds about right. So my answer is 610. Lanternfish depths. Going to the height between America and space.
The correct answer is 80 lanternfish depths.
Oh! Space is so much closer than I thought.
Space starts at 50 miles or 81 kilometers. Just a short drive.
Wait.
It's a 2-hour drive. Is that what that is?
Did I do something
No, an
wrong?
hour drive. An hour drive going up.
Did you say 50 miles?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I put another 0 in there. I divided it by 2 million. My real answer is 61 instead of 610. So I actually would have been not insanely close.
61, what's 60 divided by 80?
76. So it's not a nursing
You
school
would have gotten
victory.
a C. You would have been able to graduate high school, but not finish nursing school.
Which is good because, you know, I shouldn't be anywhere near needles.
Well, that's all I got for that. Do you have any fast facts before we get into the major fact?
I do. Just a few. So like you said, they live at depths of 1,000 meters, which is very deep in the ocean. They live in the North Atlantic and the Mediterranean area. And they mostly eat copepods and euphausids. I'm just going to leave that there since we all definitely know exactly what those things are and we encounter them every day, and it warrants no explanation. No, it's basically zooplankton and krill. I don't know why they didn't just say those things because it's not just basically that. Euphausids are just straight up krill. So they're both little crustaceans that are eaten by the billions by much bigger animals and fish. So, and I'll leave it at that. I'll let you talk about the rest of it, assuming that your major fact also includes them being bioluminescent.
Not much, so you could talk about that when it comes time to.
Oh, I didn't do any research on it because I thought you were going to do it.
This is a thick major fact.
Okay.
So, in the early 1900s, humans started to learn to use echoes to judge distance and locations right around the time they invented the tow truck. I think 1915.
Everything is just around, but before tow truck and after tow truck. That's how we just do. BTT or ATT.
Yeah.
Which is
today. Go ahead. That's my thing from Star Wars.
Yeah, that's my Star Wars day. Yeah. It's life day.
Today's sonar is what we call the use of sound to bounce off things underwater. It's radar if it's not underwater. Did you know that? Radar and sonar.
Radar's for the sky, for air, and sonar's for water.
Yeah. In those early years, scientists used hypersonics in the ocean and found something deep below the surface that reflected sonar. It was thought that they had found the ocean floor. Surely only that could explain this barrier that seemed to be so vast. The only problem, the floor would move. Depending on the time of day, the sonar reflective surface would move up or down quite a bit. So they called it the deep scattering layer, whatever this was. It was thought that what was thought of as a floor is, to this day, was then actually a great mass of animals. Fish collect in what is called the twilight zone or the mesopelagic zone, which is an area of ocean that light just barely reaches, like twilight. So many of these fish are lanternfish, the entire family of lanternfish, including our spotted friend. Because when the light fades, you need a lantern, and it actually does have bioluminescence. There, I talked about it.
There you go.
At night, the fish follow the twilight toward the surface to feed. So it's not strange to find that animals reflect sonar. If you've ever used a fish finder, you know that you can find schools of fish with sound.
The only reason why that works is because fish reflect sonar.
Yeah.
The only reason why anything uses sonar is to find fish.
Yeah.
That's like the whole. Much. There were no fish, nothing would have sonar. There'd be no reason.
Or submarines.
Yeah.
But this wall of fish seems to stretch unbroken for hundreds of miles. That's a big school.
That's a lot of fish.
Yeah. Today we know the deep scattering layer stretches all over the world's oceans. So the deep scattering layer, all these this school of fish is all around us.
Right now?
We're in a fish bubble, essentially. Or on a fish bubble.
This is an episode of The Twilight Zone where we realize that we're just surrounded by fish all the time?
Yeah. In fact, the biomass
it's the biomass.
Oh, did we do the mash? The biomass of fish in the deep scattering layer could be greater than 30 times the current human population.
So, like 180 billion.
A big, like a lot. 180 billion
fish.
People's worth of fish.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's what? We didn't talk about how many fish go into a person, but multiply it by that.
Yeah. So lanternfish are so numerous that they make up 65% of all life in the deep sea.
Goodness gracious.
These fish move together and evade predators using the lateral line system, which sharks have too. That's the special organ that helps them detect small pressure changes in the water. It also makes them really difficult to study because they drop nets down to scoop. It should be easy, right? This huge biomass of fish. Drop a big enough net and you catch thousands. But no, they are really good at evading predators and nets. So you catch almost nothing when you do that.
That is really weird. You'd think that a sperm whale should forego the whole duking it out with a giant squid and just go down there with his mouth open.
For the longest time, we didn't know how many fish there were because every time we tried to scoop some, we wouldn't get very many. But now with today's technology, we found that it's gigatons of fish down there. So lanternfish have well-developed swim bladders that allow them to ascend hundreds of feet each night. But this swim bladder filled with gas seems to be really good at reflecting sonar. So that's these little swim bladders all huddled together are what has made this wall of to sonar. But here's the weird part. Lanternfish are also instrumental, could not do without them in keeping the planet cool. So we are familiar with the concept of global warming through a buildup of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. But there's something called the carbon cycle that cycles it, stuff absorbs it, plants absorb it. But the ocean is a huge part of the carbon cycle. So you think like, surely the rainforest is like, or surely the Great Plains with all their green grass, like that's where the most of the carbon is going to be soaked up. But it's actually the ocean. The ocean is a huge surface covered in phytoplankton, which is plankton that is plants, that absorbs CO2 and converts that inorganic carbon, gaseous carbon, into organic carbon, which can be eaten by zooplankton, which is plankton that is animals. And zooplankton is a major food supply for the ocean's predators. So dead cells, detritus, fecal matter drift downward in what is called marine snow. Gross. And marine snow forms the basis of the deep sea food chain. So you've got the above food chain absorbing all this carbon that's raining down in this marine snow that forms the basis of the deep sea food chain. So lanternfish make this up and down journey each day and directly transport carbon from the surface to the deep sea. So they're literally making carbon runs every day, absorbing carbon into the deep ocean, taking all this carbon out of the atmosphere and burying it deep in the sea. So without the lanternfish, more carbon might build up in the atmosphere or on the surface of the ocean.
Yeah. So keep those trillions and trillions of lanternfish alive. Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's pretty easy because they're difficult to kill or catch.
I watched I watched a thing about how like now the overfishing has led some people to turn towards the land, like the deep scattering layer fish, because they're a hugely abundant food source if you figure out how to catch them. Probably through night fishing, I would imagine. But yeah, it's a lot of fish. Have you ever been night fishing on the ocean?
I'm trying to figure out how many fish, and it is. Pretty sure I did this math right. Million, billion, trillion, 2 quadrillion fish, with some change in the billions. 2,041,140 billion. That's given that it's 180 billion people's worth of fish, and there are only 6 grams. And if given the average person is 150 pounds, that means that 11,000 of these guys go into one person. And so, yeah, there are a lot of guys.
There's a lot of fish. Have you ever been night fishing on the ocean?
No, not on a boat or anything like that. No.
I went this year. And there's like you catch it at a certain time. I'll have to ask, now that I know this, I'll have to ask the people I went with if that was the deep scattering layer. But they chum the waters, and at a certain point, and they were like timing it based on the moon's position and everything. Like there's a lot that goes into like timing a night fish. But they had chummed the waters, and at a certain point you heard like splashing and like just fish everywhere. it's like pitch black, but if you like shined a light, you'd see like a ton of fish just like escape the light. It was crazy. But I wonder if that's the deep scattering layer, fish from that.
I mean, I feel like a fish that is adapted to live at 3,000 feet below the surface would not fare well at the surface.
They do come to the surface to eat, and they go down to the bottom, down to the deep. At night, they come to the surface.
That is a long way to swim. And also, how come the blobfish got so
1,000 meters or 1,000 feet? I forget what it was. Was like the low end, like high end in number, low end in depth of the lanternfish range. The deep scattering layer is between 980 to 1,600 feet.
Feet, not meters?
Not meters. 300 to 500 meters.
Okay. Still, usually things that live that far down explode when they reach the surface. So, I guess it helps to be a cartilaginous fish. Or not a cartilaginous fish, a bony fish. The opposite. And have a rigid body structure. But see our episode on the blobfish to see what happens to something that is meant to live at the bottom of the ocean. That's quite a journey.
Yeah. It's a lateral migration.
I'd be like, we got to go back? It's so far away and so cold.
And then they'd say, everyone else would be like, absolutely, the seagulls are coming.
And also everyone else is doing it, Ted.
Yeah, do what your lateral line system tells you.
Let's go back to throwing off people's fish radars. We have a job to do, Ted.
But imagine being at night and just like a wall of... You're looking at your fish finder and a wall is approaching your boat.
Suddenly 2.04 quadrillion fish are approaching your boat. It's like, well, this is how we die. Interesting. Also, yeah, they do have photophores, and they actually potentially use their bioluminescence to communicate, but that is not uncommon at the bottom of the ocean. Even though apparently animals, you'd think that like you have this thing in your head where the further you go down, like near the bottom of the abyss of the ocean, there isn't much. But turns out that's where all the stuff is. all of the animal is there. And we just thought it was the ocean floor. That's why it was so big. It's like, that's nuts. That's like in fiction where you're like, hey, look at that mountain. And then it stands up and it's like, oh, it was actually a monster.
Yeah. This is one of the majorest of major facts. Among the majorest.
That is...
Top 50 majorist.
That is pretty nuts. Yeah, that must have been pretty confusing for World War II submarines.
Yeah. Well, that was part of the, like, they were freaking out. Because they were like, submarines can hide in this deep scattering layer. And we won't be able to detect them.
Well, could World War II submarines go that deep?
At night, they would wait for it to just come past them.
Yeah, I guess.
But I guess also if you're in the deep scattering layer and you're traveling in a submarine that's using sonar to figure out where the ocean mountains are,
you can't navigate because you're technically inside the ocean floor.
Yeah.
So you got anything else?
That's all I got.
All right, that was the lanternfish. Bet you didn't know that we are surrounded by fish. You probably already knew that, but not 2 quadrillion of them. So if you're out there in Podcastia, kick on those KC lights. Keep those giant, unblinking eyes open as though you had a choice. And scramble those U-boat sonars like the Lanternfish here in Life, Death, and Taxonomy.
Hey Taxonomy Titans, I just want to remind you that we now have a Patreon. Patrons can see full video episodes and get shoutouts on the show. But ultimately, it's a way for you to help us cover some costs and get even better. Still, reviews are the best way to help us grow. So if you haven't left one yet, we'd really love to hear from you. As always, thanks for listening and engaging.
Life, Death, and Taxonomy is my favorite in the world podcast.
The real fish bladder is the earth itself.